The morning fog drifted lazily over the surface of the Green River, creating the illusion of an otherworldliness. Asker Montgomery, a 63-year-old fisherman, had been sitting in his shabby folding chair for the third hour, hoping to catch something. The river was generous, but not this time. Asker reached for his thermos of coffee when something in the water caught his eye. At first, he thought it was just a snag stuck near the shore, but when the fog cleared a little, he saw the outline of a human body. "Jesus Christ," Asker whispered, dropping the thermos. 20 minutes later, the police cars were already parked on the riverbank, ribboned off. Detective Rashad Byers stepped out of his tattered sedan, donning latex gloves. The 38-year-old investigator had seen a lot of dead bodies in his career, but he'd never gotten used to the sight. "What do we got?" he asked the young officer who had first arrived on the scene. "Female, approximately 25 years old, black. No identification found on her," the officer reported. "A fisherman discovered the body about 7 o'clock this morning." Byers nodded and headed for the water. The body had already been pulled ashore. A young woman with black pigtails was lying on her back, her eyes open as if she were wondering at the sky. She was wearing a summer dress, soaked and stained with river silt. How long had she been in the water? Byers asked the medical examiner, who was already examining the body. "Judging by the condition of the skin and the decomposition that had begun, I'd say 2 or 3 days, Dr. Clayton replied, not taking his eyes off his work. "But I'll know for sure after the autopsy." Byers examined the body carefully. At first glance, it looked like an accident. The girl could have fallen into the river, drowned, and the current had brought her here. But something was bothering him. "Look at her neck," said Dr. Clayton, as if he had read his mind. "See those faint marks?" Byers leaned closer. There were faint bruises on the woman's neck. "Preliminary evidence of strangulation," Clayton continued. "And I doubt she drowned. She was probably dead when she hit the water." Detective Byers felt the hunting instinct awaken inside him. What appeared to be an accident had just turned into a murder. "We need an ID," he said, straightening up, "and find her family." The victim was identified quickly enough. The station had received a missing persons report on a young woman, Nisha Brooks, 24 years old, who had not returned home 3 days ago. Description matched the body that was found. Byers sat in his office, looking at the photo of the happy young woman from the missing persons report. Nisha Brooks was smiling into the camera, holding a bouquet of flowers. It was a wedding photo taken just 2 months ago. "Oh shit," Byers muttered. The honeymoon ended in tragedy. The hardest part of detective work was always informing the family of the death of their loved ones. Byers knocked on the door of a small house on the outskirts of Green River. The house looked well kept but modest, painted a light blue color with a small garden out front. The door was opened by a tall man with strained hands and tired eyes. Darius Brooks looked older than his 44 years. Gray had already touched his short hair, and his face was riddled with deep wrinkles. "Minus Mr. Brooks?" "Detective Rashad Byers, Green River Police Department." Byers introduced himself, showing his badge. "Did you find Nisha?" Darius asked hopefully. Byers took a deep breath. "Mr. Brooks, I'm very sorry, but we found your wife's body. She was discovered in the Green River this morning." Darius froze, his face expressionless, as if he hadn't heard or understood what was being said. Then his knees buckled and he grabbed the door jamb to keep from falling. No, he repeated, shaking his head. "Not my Nisha, not her." Byers supported the man and helped him to the couch in the living room. Darius collapsed on it, covering his face with his hands. His shoulders shook in silent sobs. "I'm sorry," Byers repeated, feeling helpless in the face of another man's grief. "We'll need you to formally identify the body, but that can wait until tomorrow." Darius raised tearful eyes to him. How did this happen?" Byers hesitated. He couldn't tell his husband that his young wife had likely been murdered. "We're still investigating the circumstances," he answered evasively. "Minus Mr. Brooks, I know this is a difficult time for you, but I need to ask you some questions. When was the last time you saw your wife?" Darius wiped his tears with the back of his hand. 3 days ago this morning. She said she was going to her friend LaShonda's, and then she'd stop by my sister's. But she never came home. I called everyone I knew, and then I called the police. And your sister? Did she see Nisha that day? Tamika said Nisha was going to come in, but she never showed up. We were all looking for her. Byers asked a few more questions about Nisha's daily routine, her friends and possible problems, but found nothing suspicious. Darius looked genuinely grief-stricken as a husband who had lost the woman he loved. I just have one question, Darius said as Byers was about to leave. Was it an accident? Did she fall into the river? Byers looked him straight in the eye. We're looking into all the circumstances, Mr. Brooks. I'll keep you informed. Byers interviewed several other people throughout the day, including Darius's sister, Tamika, a thin woman of 32 with short hair and a serious look. She worked as a nurse at the local clinic and gave the impression of a responsible person. I was supposed to meet her that day, Tamika said in a shaky voice. If she had come to me, maybe she would still be alive. Tamika seemed devastated by the news of her sister-in-law's death, but something in her demeanor alarmed Byers. Too much emotion for a sister-in-law relationship. The conversation with LaShonda Tatters, Nisha's best friend, was particularly interesting. They met at a small cafe near the police station. LaShonda, a 29-year-old woman with bright red hair and multiple bracelets on her wrists, was nervously twirling a cup of coffee in her hands. I can't believe she's gone, she said, looking out the window. We were going to go to a concert next week. You were the last person to see her alive, Byers remarked. Did she come to see you that day? Yeah, we spent a couple hours together. She was, upset. Upset? Upset about what? LaShonda was hesitant to speak. Look, Detective, I don't want to speak ill of Darius, especially now that he's lost his wife, but their marriage wasn't as happy as it looked from the outside. Byers stepped forward. What do you mean? Nisha said that Darius had become very suspicious lately, constantly checking her phone, asking where she'd been, who she'd talked to. She felt like she was in a cage. Was he violent? Did he use physical force? No, it didn't come to that, at least not that she told me. But she was unhappy. Said she made a mistake marrying him. The age difference, the different interests. She felt suffocated in the relationship. Byers made a note in his notebook. An unhappy marriage is a motive, albeit a weak one. Did she want to leave him? LaShonda shrugged her shoulders. She was just beginning to think about it. They'd only been married 2 months, after all. She'd said she wanted to try to make things right, but she didn't know how. Was she having an affair with someone else? LaShonda looked away. I can't talk about that. Nisha was my friend, and I don't want to taint her memory. LaShonda, if you have information that can help the investigation, you have an obligation to provide it. The woman sighed. Nisha had said she had met someone who understood her better than Darius. But she wouldn't name names, and I didn't insist. I just wanted her to be happy. That evening, Byers received the preliminary results of the autopsy. Dr. Clayton confirmed his suspicions. Nisha Brooks had died of strangulation. Death had occurred 24 to 36 hours before the body was found, which means she was killed shortly after she disappeared. The marks on her neck indicate strangulation by hand, the doctor explained, showing the autopsy photos. The killer most likely strangled her from the front, facing away from her. This usually indicates a crime committed under extreme emotional arousal. A crime of passion? Byers suggested. It's possible. There's also signs of a struggle. Broken nails, bruises on her wrists, she fought back. Signs of sexual assault? No, nothing like that. And the other interesting thing is there's virtually no water in her lungs. She was already dead when she hit the river. Someone tried to fake an accident. Byers thanked the doctor and went back to his office. A picture was beginning to emerge. A young woman, unhappily married, possibly having an affair on the side. A jealous husband who's growing increasingly suspicious. Classic motive for murder. But it was too early to draw conclusions. He had no direct evidence, only circumstantial clues and hunches. He needed to dig deeper, to find the connection between all these people, and to understand what had happened on that fateful day when Nisha Brooks had disappeared. Byers took Nisha's picture and pinned it on the investigation board. The young woman looked up at him with a smile, unaware that her life would be cut short so soon and so tragically. The detective vowed to himself that he would find the killer and bring justice. The morning of the second day of the investigation began for Detective Rashad Byers with a cup of strong coffee and a review of the collected materials. On the blackboard in his office, the chronology of events and the connections between the defendants in the case were already being laid out. Byers decided to start by looking into the newlyweds' backgrounds. A quick search of the database showed that Darius Brooks had been previously married but divorced 8 years ago. He had no children, minor offenses in his youth, a bar fight, a DUI, but nothing serious. For the past 15 years, he's worked as an auto mechanic at Wheeler & Sons. Nisha Brooks, maiden name Carter, was 20 years younger than her husband. She worked as a waitress at the local diner Sally's, where apparently and met Darius. No trouble with the law, just a regular working-class girl. Byers sighed. Nothing remarkable. Just an ordinary couple. He decided to talk to Nisha's co-workers to get a better idea of what she was like. Sally's Diner was a typical roadside establishment with worn vinyl couches and the smell of fried onions. The owner, a full woman with a tired face, introduced herself as Sally Jenkins. Nisha was a good girl, she said, wiping her hands on her apron. Hard-working, polite, customers loved her. How long had she worked for you? About 3 years. She came in young, just out of high school. Did Darius Brooks come in here often? Sally frowned. He started coming in regularly about a year ago. Always sat at the counter, ordered a coffee, and watched Nisha. At first I thought he was just another weirdo, the type who falls in love with waitresses. But then they started dating. Do you think it was a happy relationship? At first, yeah. Nisha lit up when she talked about him. He was 20 years older, but he was very attentive. Gave her flowers, picked her up after her shift. But the last couple months... Sally hesitated. She'd gotten tense. She smiled less. I asked if everything was okay, and she said she was just tired. Did she mention any problems with her husband? Not directly. But one time I saw Darius waiting for her in the car after his shift. They were arguing about something. She seemed upset. Byers thanked Sally and talked to several other diner employees. All of them described Nisha as a friendly, kind girl who seemed depressed lately. No one knew the details of her personal life, but everyone had noticed a change in her mood after the wedding. The next step was to visit Tamika Brooks again. This time, Byers decided to visit her home, unannounced. Tamika lived in a small, neat house on the other side of town. When she opened the door, Byers noticed that her eyes were red from crying. "Detective?" Tamika looked surprised. "Is something wrong?" "I need to ask you a few more questions, Ms. Brooks. May I come in?" Tamika reluctantly let him inside. The house was clean, but there were boxes of belongings everywhere, as if she was about to move. "Planning on going somewhere?" Byers asked, pointing to the boxes. Yeah, I'm thinking of moving closer to work. This house is too big for me alone." Byers nodded, even though the house wasn't big at all. They sat down in the living room, and the detective noticed a picture of Tamika with a young woman on the table. It was Nisha, and they were hugging and smiling for the camera. "Were you close to Nisha?" he asked, pointing to the photograph. Tamika looked at the picture and quickly flipped it face down. "Yes, we got along well. She was a wonderful person. Yesterday you said you were supposed to meet her the day she disappeared, but she didn't show up?" "No. We said she'd come by after her meeting with LaShonda, but she never showed up. I called her. I texted her." Tamika's voice trembled. "If she had come to me, maybe things would have been different. I understand you and your brother are close. We've always supported each other. Our parents died early, and somehow we got used to relying on each other. How did you feel about him marrying Nisha?" Tamika hesitated. "I was happy for him. Darius had been alone for a long time after his divorce. Nisha had given him back the joy of life, but something in her eyes said otherwise." Byers decided to come at it from a different angle. "Is your brother a jealous man?" "Why do you ask?" Tamika tensed up. "It's a standard question in investigations like this. We're trying to get a psychological profile of everyone involved." Tamika sighed. "Yes, Darius has always been possessive. In his first marriage, that's what caused his divorce. His wife couldn't stand the constant suspicion and scrutiny. And Nisha? She was fine at first. But over the last month, he started to notice her drifting away, started checking her cell phone, asking where she'd been. Once he even followed her to LaShonda's house." Byers made a note in his notebook. Paranoia and jealousy are a bad combination. Were you aware of any conflicts between them? Tamika shook her head. Nisha didn't tell me about the problems with Darius. She's always been secretive about it. Don't you find it strange that your sister-in-law didn't share with you the problems with your brother? Tamika turned pale. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe she didn't want to embarrass me. Byers decided there was enough pressure on Tamika for the day. He stood up, thanked her, and headed for the door. But already on the threshold, he turned around. By the way, Ms. Brooks, did you know that Nisha had someone else? Tamika flinched, her eyes widening with fear. What? No, I don't know anything about that. Byers nodded and walked out, leaving Tamika in a state of obvious worry. She was hiding something, and he was determined to find out what it was. The next item was a repeat visit to the home of Darius Brooks. This time, Byers came with a search warrant. Darius looked surprised and indignant. Do you think I had something to do with Nishi's death? He asked as the officers methodically searched the house. I loved her. I still can't believe she's gone. This is standard procedure, Mr. Brooks, Byers replied calmly. We have to check every possible lead. Darius sank doomedly onto the couch, watching the officers. Byers scrutinized the surroundings. The house was small but cozy. Photos of Nisha and Darius hung on the walls. Wedding pictures, vacations together at the lake, the usual happy moments. One of the officers called Byers into the bedroom. Detective, you might want to take a look at this. The officer pointed to a small camera cleverly hidden in the wall clock. It was pointed directly at the bed. Minus Mr. Brooks, Byers called out. Can you explain what this is? Darius approached the bedroom and froze when he saw the camera. His face flushed red with embarrassment or anger. Byers couldn't tell for sure. I installed it a while ago. I had my suspicions. What kind of suspicions? Darius lowered his head. I thought Nisha was cheating on me. She became distant, constantly texting someone else, deleting messages. I wanted to know the truth. And what did the camera show? Nothing. I only installed it a week ago and haven't had a chance to look at the footage yet. Byers ordered the camera and all storage devices in the house removed. If Darius was telling the truth, the tapes could provide valuable information. The next unexpected find was the garage. At first glance, it looked like an auto mechanic's garage. Tools, parts, motorcycle in the corner. But when the forensic team treated the room with luminol, the floor and walls showed traces of blood, invisible to the naked eye. Someone cleaned the floor thoroughly, but the marks were still there. It looks like there was a struggle here, said one of the forensic technicians, pointing to the spatter pattern. Blood splattered on the walls about 1.5 meters above the floor. Byers examined the tools spread out on the workbench. Many of them had been recently washed, but some could still show traces of blood. He was particularly interested in the adjustable wrench, which had fingerprints on the handle. Bag this for examination, he ordered, pointing to the wrench, and take blood samples for DNA testing. Darius watched with growing concern. I don't understand, he muttered. Where did the blood come from? I was working on the machine last week. Maybe I hurt myself. We'll check it out, Mr. Brooks, Byers replied. If it's your blood, forensics will confirm it. In addition to traces of blood, forensic experts found in the garage several long black hairs and microparticles of fabric, similar to the material of the dress in which Nisha was found. All of the evidence indicated that the garage may have been a crime scene. After the search, Byers sent Darius to the station with one of the officers and decided to talk to the neighbors himself. The Brooks house stood on a quiet street where everyone knew each other. Most of the neighbors described Darius as a quiet, hard-working man and Nisha as an affable young woman. They seemed happy, said an elderly Mrs. Wilkins who lives across the street, although the age difference was certainly noticeable. Did you notice anything unusual about their relationship? Well, they argued sometimes, as couples do, but lately. She thought about it. In the last 2 or 3 weeks, they've been arguing more often. Sometimes I could hear them yelling through the open windows. What were they arguing about? I can't say for sure, but once I heard Darius yell something like, I know you're lying to me. That was last week. Byers next questioned the neighbor to his right, Leon Hammond, a middle-aged man who worked as a night watchman and was often home during the day. "Yeah, I heard them arguing the night she disappeared," Leon said, rubbing his hands together nervously. "I was just getting ready for work. It was about 6 in the evening." "What exactly did you hear?" "First loud voices, then some kind of rumble, like something falling or breaking, then a woman screaming, and then it went quiet. I thought about intervening, but—" He lowered his head guiltily. "I decided it was none of my business. Family quarrels, you know. And now I think I might have saved her life." "It wasn't your fault, Mr. Hammond," Byers reassured him. "What happened next?" "About an hour later, I saw Darius pull out of the garage in his pickup truck. He doesn't usually drive that late, so I remembered. He came back at night when I went out for a smoke before work." "Did you notice anything unusual about his behavior?" "He seemed, tense. He didn't say hello, even though he usually waved. Just walked quickly into the house." Byers thanked Leon and headed toward the last house in the neighborhood. A young couple with a child lived there, who had little to add except that they saw Tamika visiting her brother and sister-in-law often. "They seemed friendly," the young mother said as she rocked the infant. "Tamika and Nisha often took walks together laughing, sometimes even without Darius." Back at the station, Byers found that the technical department had already retrieved the footage from the camera found at the Brooks house. Most of the files were corrupted, as if someone had tried to delete them, but a few had been recovered. The footage showed Brooks's bedroom. Empty. Nothing remarkable, except for one fragment dated the day Nisha disappeared. It showed Darius entering the room, sitting on the bed and taking a long look at the photograph on the nightstand. Then he picks up his cell phone and types something quickly. His face contorts with anger. He throws the phone on the bed and runs out of the room. What kind of message did he read? Byers muttered. "We need to check his phone." Darius's phone had already been seized during the search and submitted to forensics. The technician said that most of the messages were deleted, but they are working on recovering them. "There is something interesting," the technician said. "On the day Nisha disappeared, Darius sent a message to his sister. 'I know everything. We need to talk.' That was about an hour before the estimated time of the murder." Byers wondered, what exactly did Darius know? What did he want to talk to his sister about? Meanwhile, the blood test results came back from the garage. The blood belonged to Nisha Brooks. Darius's fingerprints and traces of the victim's blood were found on the crescent wrench, all indicating that the garage was where the murder took place. But something still didn't add up. If Darius killed Nisha out of jealousy, who was her lover? LaShonda hinted at someone but didn't name names. Maybe Darius had learned the truth that day and couldn't face it. Byers went back to the testimony of the neighbors. Leon Hammond had seen Darius leave in the evening and return at night. Probably at that time he disposed of the body by dumping it in the river. But what had happened before that? He reread the report of Nisha's last movements. She had been to LaShonda's place, then was going to Tamika's. LaShonda had confirmed that Nisha had left her around 4 in the afternoon and headed toward Tamika's house. Byers decided to verify this information. He called the owner of the store located on the corner of the street where Tamika lived. "Do you have outdoor surveillance cameras?" he asked. "Yes, of course," the owner replied. "We installed them after the robbery last year. I need the footage from last Tuesday from 4 to 6 p.m. I'd like to see the footage." An hour later, Byers was already reviewing the camera footage. And there it is. At 17 hours and 10 minutes, Nisha Brooks walks past the store and heads toward Tamika's house. She looks calm, even smiling at someone she met along the way. Byers continued watching. At 17 hours and 40 minutes, Nisha walks out of Tamika's house. She looks worried, looks around a few times. And then Darius's pickup truck appears on the footage and slowly drives by. Nisha notices it and freezes in place. The car stops, Darius gets out, and they talk intensely about something. Then Nisha gets in the car and they drive off. Tamika lied, Byers muttered. Nisha was at her place that day. He decided to talk to Tamika again, but he wanted to gather more information first. He went back to the technician's report on Darius's cell phone. Besides the message to his sister, there had been another interesting call that day, from one Travis Morgan, Darius's co-worker at the machine shop. Buyers found Travis at Wheeler & Sons. He was a stout man with tattoos on his arms and a wary look. "I talked to Darius that day, yes," Travis confirmed. "He called me in a state of extreme agitation, said his wife was cheating on him." "Did he give you the name of the man she was cheating on him with?" Travis shook his head. "No, he just kept repeating, 'How could she? How could she?' I tried to calm him down, told him he needed to talk to his wife, figure things out, but he was out of his mind." "Did you know he had a hidden camera in the bedroom?" "What? No, he didn't tell me that, but he'd been very suspicious lately, always checking his phone, afraid he'd miss a message." Buyers thanked Travis and went back to the station. The picture of the crime was becoming clearer and clearer. Darius suspected his wife was cheating on him, set up a camera, followed her. That day, he probably saw something that confirmed his suspicions and tracked Nisha down at Tamika's house. They had an argument, he brought her home, and there in the garage the murder took place. But who was Nisha's lover? And what role did Tamika play in all this? Buyers needed to talk to Darius's sister again, but this time with more specific questions. Tamika Brooks nervously rubbed the edge of her sweater as she sat in the interrogation room of the Green River Police Station. Detective Rashad Byers silently laid out the surveillance photos in front of her, which clearly showed Nisha entering and exiting her home 40 minutes later. "You lied to me, Ms. Brooks," Byers said, looking her straight in the eye. "Nisha was at your house the day she disappeared." Tamika lowered her gaze to the photographs, her shoulders slumping. "I was afraid," she whispered. "Afraid you'd think I had something to do with her death." "Did you?" "No," her voice trembled. "I would never hurt Nisha. I loved her." There was silence in the room. Byers watched Tamika's reaction carefully. Her face contorted in pain, and she covered it with her hands, unable to hold back her sobs. "Were you romantically involved with your brother's wife?" Byers asked when Tamika had calmed down a little. She nodded slowly. "It started by accident. We became close when Darius was on a business trip 3 months ago. Nisha was so alive, full of energy. She breathed new life into me. I'd never felt this way about a woman before, but it was different with her." "Did Darius know?" "No. We went to great lengths to hide our relationship. Nisha even married him to avert suspicion. She said it would make it easier to see each other so I could come to their house freely. We had planned to tell him one day, but, we were afraid of his reaction. Darius always had a temper." "What happened the day she came to see you?" Tamika sighed, gathering her thoughts. She had been agitated. Said Darius was getting more and more suspicious, checking her phone, following her. She found a hidden camera in the bedroom and was afraid he knew something. We decided it was best for her to stay with me for a while until we could figure out what to do next. "But she didn't stay with you, but she..." As she was leaving my place, Darius showed up. I watched from the window. They argued about something, and then she got into his car. I called her, texted her, but she didn't answer. And the next day, Darius reported her missing. "Why didn't you tell the police?" Tamika raised her tearful eyes to him. "I was afraid. Afraid that if the truth came out, everyone would think I killed her out of jealousy or something. Or that Darius killed her because of me. I couldn't live with that." Byers stared silently at the broken woman in front of him. Her story sounded plausible and explained a lot. Now it was time to talk to Darius. Before doing so, Byers met with the technician who had recovered the deleted messages from Darius's phone. "Here's what's interesting," the technician said, showing the printouts. The day Nisha disappeared, Darius received an anonymous text message with a picture. It showed his wife kissing a woman. You can't see the woman's face, but judging by her clothes and hairstyle, it could be his sister. Who sent the photo? The number's undetectable, probably a disposable SIM card. But an hour after receiving this message, Darius texted his sister, "I know everything, we need to talk." And then he called his coworker Travis, and then he turned his phone off for a few hours, turned it back on at night around 2 o'clock. Byers nodded. The picture was coming together. Someone had sent Darius a picture of his wife with another woman. He guessed it was his sister and drove to her house, where he saw Nisha coming out of there. He picked her up, brought her home, and killed her in a fit of rage. Forensics also came back on the divorce key from Darius's garage. They found not only the owner's fingerprints on it, but also particles of fabric from Nisha's clothes, as well as traces of her blood and hair. By all accounts, that was the murder weapon. Darius Brooks sat in the same interrogation room where his sister had recently been. He looked haggard, with dark circles under his eyes and sunken cheeks. Byers sat across from him, spreading out the case file in front of him. "Minus Mr. Brooks, I think it's time we had a straight talk," the detective began. "We have evidence that your wife was murdered in your garage. Her blood on the floor, on the walls, on your crescent wrench. We have a witness who heard an argument and saw you drive away in your pickup truck that evening. We have camera footage of you picking up Nisha from your sister's house." Darius sat motionless, staring at one point. "We also know that you installed a hidden camera in the bedroom because you suspected your wife of cheating on you. And on the day she disappeared, you received a photograph confirming your suspicions." Darius raised his eyes to the detective. "You talked to Tamika." It wasn't a question, it was a statement. "Yes, she told us everything," Byers confirmed. "About her relationship with Nisha, about your appearance that day, about how you took Nisha away." "Did she say I killed Nisha?" "No, she said she didn't know what happened after you left. But we do, Mr. Brooks. All the evidence points to you." Darius took a deep breath, his shoulders slumping as if a heavy weight had been lifted from them. "I didn't mean it," he said quietly. "I loved her. Even when I found out she was cheating on me, I still loved her." "Tell me what happened that day," Byers asked softly, turning on the recorder. Darius closed his eyes, remembering. "I had long suspected something was wrong. Nisha changed, became distant, constantly texting someone, deleting messages. I thought she was having an affair with some guy. I set up a camera in the bedroom, but nothing came up. And then that day, I got a text message with a picture of..." He stopped talking, trying to deal with his emotions. "At first, I couldn't believe it was Tamika, my own sister and my wife. I texted Tamika, and then I went to her house, and I saw Nisha coming out of there. Everything fell into place." "What did you do?" "I went over there, we talked. She didn't deny it, said she loved Tamika, that it started before we were married, that she only married me for cover, to be closer to Tamika." Darius clenched his fists so hard his knuckles turned white. "I was furious, but I held back. Said we needed to talk at home. She got in the car and we drove off. All the way there, she said how sorry she was that things had turned out this way, that she never meant to hurt me. And I thought about how they were laughing behind my back, how they were using me. What happened when you got home? We went to the garage. I wanted to show her proof of her cheating, printouts of her messages to Tamika that I had recovered. We started arguing. She yelled that I had no right to spy on her, to read her messages. And then she told me she was leaving for Tamika, that they'd been planning to run away together for a long time." Darius covered his face with his hands. "I don't remember what happened next. At some point, I grabbed the wrench off the workbench and when I woke up, she was lying on the floor with blood all around her. I tried to revive her, but it was too late." "What did you do next?" "I panicked. I called Travis, talked some rambling crap about cheating, then I disconnected my phone. I thought about what to do. I cleaned out the garage, wrapped the body in a tarp, put it in the truck, and drove to the river. I knew they'd find her anyway, but I wanted to buy time to figure out what to do next." "Why didn't you give up right away?" Darius raised tired eyes to him. "I was afraid of prison, afraid of what people would say, but most of all, I was afraid to admit that I killed the woman I loved because of my own jealousy and anger." Byers wrote down Darius's confession and read him his rights. Officers soon arrived to escort him to his cell until his trial. Darius did not resist, as if resigned to his fate. As Byers left the interrogation room, he saw Tamika waiting in the hallway. Her face was swollen with tears. "Did he confess?" she asked quietly. Byers nodded. "Yes, to everything. He killed her in the garage and then dumped her body in the river." Tamika closed her eyes, tears streaming from them. "It's my fault. If I hadn't—" "You didn't make him kill," Byers interrupted her. "He made his choice. But if Nisha and I had been honest with him from the beginning, if we hadn't hidden our relationship, maybe things would have turned out differently." "We'll never know," the detective replied. "But your lies and secrecy definitely played a part in this tragedy." Tamika nodded, acknowledging his point. What will happen to Darius? Given his confession and all the evidence, he'll probably be charged with second-degree murder. If his lawyer can prove it was a crime of passion, he could get 15 to 25 years. And me? You didn't commit a crime, Ms. Brooks. Morally questionable behavior is not my jurisdiction. Tamika grinned bitterly. Do you think I can live with that? Knowing that the woman I loved is dead because of me? That my brother is in prison because of me? Byers didn't answer. It wasn't his place to judge or comfort. His work was done, the killer found, the case solved. But the bitter taste remained. There were no winners here, no true justice served. Just 3 broken lives and an endless chain of consequences for rash decisions. 3 weeks later, the court ordered Darius Brooks to be remanded in custody pending trial. Byers attended the hearing, watching as the once stalwart man turned into a shadow of himself. After the session, the detective noticed Tamika standing at the window in the court hallway. She was staring at the rain drumming on the glass, her gaze absent. Byers approached her. "How are you?" Tamika turned to him. There were no tears or emotion on her face, just endless fatigue. "I'm selling the house," she said. "I'm leaving Green River. Too many memories." "Where are you going?" "I don't know. Someplace where no one knows me, where I can start with a clean slate." Byers nodded. He'd seen it before, people trying to run away from the past, but the past always found a way to catch up. "I'm visiting Darius in prison," Tamika continued. "He doesn't want to see me, but I come anyway. I sit across from him and we don't talk. Sometimes I think he wants to kill me, and sometimes I think he still loves me in spite of everything. It's just the two of us." "Time heals," Byers said the cliché, not knowing what else to say. "No, detective," Tamika shook her head. "Time doesn't heal anything. It just teaches us to live with the pain." She turned and walked toward the exit, a small, lonely figure against the gray, rainy day. Byers stared after her, thinking about how many more stories like this, how many more broken lives he'd seen in his career, and how many more there were to see. The detective sighed, turned and walked in the opposite direction to his car. The Nisha Brooks case was closed, but the echoes of that tragedy would echo in the lives of all involved for years to come. And the Green River continued its leisurely run, keeping in its dark waters many more secrets waiting to be discovered.